Yo. Welcome to Mr. Woods World History, yo. Flip style. Okay, as I told you, it's going to be a little different. So let's hope this isn't too much of a failure, like some of you. No, I'm just kidding. Totally jokes, parents, if you're listening. I'm kidding. Okay, like my classroom. Yeah, this is where you guys could be. Okay, but let's have a little bit of fun. Talk about the Industrial Revolution here, yo. It's 12.1. Okay, so some of the things about the Industrial Revolution we've already kind of heard that it started in Britain. Okay, England, if you want to be precise, because they had so much money and they could do the stuff we couldn't do. One of the big things I want you to understand about the revolution is that where England got all their money from. Remember, they had more money in their banks than every financial center in the world combined at the time. So they had a little thing called the triangular trade. Okay, the triangular trade, basically, you had raw materials, then you had some slaves, you had some sugar and molasses and rum. So this is how they got their money. The slave trade. The 1600s and 1700s, England made money on people. Then they also had some natural resources. You had coal, you had timber, you had iron ore, right? These natural resources. Coal is what drives the steam engine and allows the train coming down the pike. So coal and these natural resources, the ability to get them, right, makes it so much more, easier to become technologically advanced in England. But what does technology lead to? Hey, magically I'm back. Okay. Another thing I want to talk to you about is the steam locomotive. Okay. George Stephenson came up with this idea. Hey, we have a steam engine. We have cars with wheels. Why don't we try to figure out this locomotive? So George Stephenson came up with the idea, and that train really revolutionized travel as we know it. Okay. Anybody ever been on a train? Trains are cool. Kind of like bow ties. Another thing that kind of helped us out, canals. Okay, canals allowed boats to go places where we couldn't go, because you pull a lock, the water would rise up, and then the boat would go away. Then if you go to one, the water would drop, then you go away. Basically, over hilly and mountain areas. So canals help revolutionize transportation. There's a downside with the Industrial Revolution. Not only have we got so many new resources, not only do we have so many people moving into an urbanized town, they're all on top of each other. So we got factories. People piled up into a factory going, hey, I want to work, hey, I want to work, hey, I want to work. And people want these people working. So they're working like 12, 13, 15-hour days. Some of these are kids. Injuries, all of like, my hand, that type of stuff. So we really have to watch our labor conditions during this time period. Mines. Anybody ever heard of black lung? Okay. Black lung, cave-ins, the explosions. People were going down there with canaries, because as soon as the canary died, they knew it was too bad down there. So there was a real high rate of accident and death trying to get these raw materials. And there's such a push. More. So more people were being pushed to do more things. Okay, so we're talking about tenement house living and child labor and all the other fun stuff in the Industrial Revolution. All it's saying is that people got in the way of progress, right? It's like we need to make more, and we don't really care how the people are. Business owners were like, yes, push, and some people died, some people got hurt. So people were the forgotten part of the Industrial Revolution. So enter a theory of what's called social Darwinism. Yeah, you know Charles Darwin, the guy, the theory of the species, evolution, that guy mapping all the things down the Galapagos Island on the Beagle was the name of his ship. Social Darwinism is kind of an offshoot of his theories. You know, the survival of the fittest. Well, only the strong shall survive was a business theory back in the Industrial Revolution, saying that all these little things that are happening, only the big, strong, robust businesses will last, and the little ones won't. Darwin never really said it, didn't really believe it, but he was the basis for this theory that, you know, initially it went from businesses to people, and later for racism, for things like, we're white power, you know, we're purple power, you know, it started going for racism. So I just thought it was an interesting way to take a scientific theory of evolution or of the origin of our species and putting it towards business, putting it towards racism. I guess that shows you can take anything out of context, right? Labor unions started to come into play, and you kind of needed labor unions. Because if you think about how bad these factories were, I mean, think about it. Would you want to work in this place all day? Really? Would you want to work with that person, and that person, and that person, you know, side by side fighting for a wage? No, with no protection. So labor unions came in and they protected the little people. They protected the folks that, you know, needed the help the most. Mines, factories, timber industry. These guys were the biggest ones, right? And it makes sense because you're the little people, hey, I need to work here, but I'm tired. And, no, you're going to work here anyway, and you're going to work till you're dead. Okay. See, that would be bad, right? That little person needs labor union, needs some help. Okay? So that's where the labor unions came into play, right? AFL, CIO, all of these other ones. But by the late 1800s, right, you know, the Industrial Revolution in the United States was post-Civil War. In England, it was about 1820-ish. 1810, 1820. So all these things are going on. But by the late 1800s, the middle class, not the upper, not the lower, the middle class was the greatest growing class in the Western world. You know, however, right about this time, we started hearing, you know, you're a female. You don't need to be at work. Your place is in the home. Okay? That's where that started to come into play. You know, in the kitchen making me a sandwich. You know, that's where people started to think that women weren't worth working and they were too fragile, right? Little did they know. But yeah, that started kind of happening right now in this whole protection age. But then the 19th Amendment came into play, women's suffrage, right? Now it's not suffrage, it's like, oh, I'm hurting so bad. No, it's suffrage has been voting. If you don't hear anything else from me this semester, you'll hear this in civics, you'll hear it in U.S. history, in college, suffrage, S-U-F-F-R-A-G-E, suffrage, right? The right to vote, whether it be African American, whether it be women, whether it be anybody, suffrage. But right now, women are like, hey, my place in the home, I'm going to vote. Also in this time period, you've got political ideas, right? This isn't just sit around and go, I'm not going to do anything today. Capitalism, free enterprise. We've already talked about Adam Smith, right? And laissez-faire economics, right? If you do that every time you hear the word laissez-faire economics, you'll remember that laissez-faire means hands off, okay? Laissez-faire economics should be automatic. Right? Hands off. Capitalism, free enterprise. Let us make what we want to make. Because that's the true spirit of laissez-faire economics. Okay? I'm like the little cat on YouTube. Laissez-faire economics. Socialism is coming into play. Socialism is where some part of the area works, some part of the area does not work. Hey, let's all share the money. Right? Basically, it's the definition of socialism is basically private business, right, shared with all. Okay. Then you have some utilitarianism. That's a 10-penny word if you've ever heard one. The greatest happiness comes with the greatest number of employees, right? you got to look at towards utopia. That's where they're headed with utilitarianism. Our greatest number of employees gets everything ready, and we're heading off to utopia, right? Versus socialism saying, hey, I didn't work a day in my life, and I'm rich, right? That's, a lot of the arguments going on today, right? You got to think about that. Then you get one of my favorite guys. He is Karl Marx. Karl Marx is a very interesting guy. I know when I went to Berlin, they actually have a name. The main street in town is the Karl Marx Strasse, based on when the Russians were in East Berlin. Karl Marx comes up with Marxism, right, and writes a piece of literature that you need to know. It's the Communist Manifesto. Communist Manifesto. And the hammer and sickle and all the things right there. It's like, rah, rah, this is what it means to be a communist. Where, the people work in the fields and they give the money to the government and we share and they have to stand in bread lines and all sorts of stuff. But Karl Marx is one of these leaders that comes in and really takes a different take, a different mindset on political ideas, and really starts pushing that way towards communism. And Karl Marx is one of the first, and it allows Russia to become the Soviet Union. The Communist Manifesto, basically, for lack of a better word, it's kind of like the bourgeoisie, the haves, versus the proletariat, the have-nots, right? It's a struggle between, social classes, right? If there wasn't a split, we'd end up having no class at all. So the bourgeoisie, the haves, and the proletariat, the have-nots, right? The workers would rise up, and gain control of all the production, right? Is that a good thing? No. So you had to have the split. That balance of classes, right? You had to have the balance, the good and evil, the light and dark, the haves and the have-nots. And that's kind of what Karl Marx is trying to say. So that's the end of today's lecture. Hopefully this wasn't too bad for you to watch. But don't forget to study this one. 12.2 and 12.3 will be right behind this. And hopefully y'all come back now. Y'all here?